Hello there, people of the internet. I was talking to somebody who was actually ex-law enforcement, and we were talking about weapon lights, and we had enough of a discussion to where I was like, you know what, that's actually a good idea for a video. So I have my little 22 long rifle 1911. This thing is by no means of the imagination a defensive firearm, and I have a weapon light on here just because this right here is one of the guns I have that has a Picatinny rail on the bottom. Weapon light does not actually fit this thing. This just pops right off, but this will serve for representation purposes. So we were talking about some of the pros and cons to having yourself some kind of weapon light on your firearm. Now, I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So I always recommend that people get weapons or people get lights on their weaponry, even if it is a secondary firearm and it's not going to be your primary. I always recommend people have some kind of lighting system on their firearm just because, like I said, it's better to have it and not need it. However, during most applications, you're not going to want to use that light. One, you're not going to want to use it for any kind of searching procedures. If you're in a situation where you think something might be going on and it's dark enough to where you need a light to look around, well, hey, you turn on your light, and everywhere where you're looking, that handgun is going to be flagging. And if you flag somebody with a handgun that is, allowed to be there, or that has the right to be there, then guess what? You have some serious legal trouble now. Now, you could potentially aim at the ground and try to use the ambient light to try and see around yourself, so you are not flagging somebody who potentially doesn't need to be flagged. I'm trying to pick my terminology here very carefully so I don't accidentally say something that I'll regret. But you might be able to use the ambient lighting to try to not flag somebody who doesn't need to be flagged, who has the right to be there, who is, allowed to be there. Maybe they were invited over, maybe something happened and they have the right to be there and you just didn't know about it. Well, that ambient lighting hits them. Now you have this unidentified threat in dim lighting. So what are you going to do? Well, you're going to aim your light at them, get a full perspective of them, and oh my God, it turns out it's just the pizza man who was delivering pizza to my daughter, who stole my credit card and ordered pizza without asking me first. Here I was thinking I had a home intruder, but no, it's just the pizza boy, and now I have to go worry about the legal troubles of aiming my 1911 at the pizza man because it was the light that I had on person. Now, if you are in a situation where perhaps brandishing a firearm would not be a good idea, like maybe you're in a city environment or something and you have your concealed carry with you, but your concealed carry has a weapons light on it and it's getting dark and you can't see and something starts happening, you don't know if it's a threat or not, well, in order to identify whether it's a threat or not, you need yourself a flashlight. To get your flashlight, you have to pull out your handgun and take aim. Well, now you're brandishing a firearm against something that might potentially not even be a threat. It might be just some geriatric walking down the street at night because you're in a public area. I mean, I don't know what the situation is. Insert your idea of situation here. But having a weapons light for identification and searching is not a very good idea. If you have positive confirmation on a target that you need to make hits on, that's when weapon lights become a very good idea. Now, if you have some sort of situation where you have an animal or an attacker that does not have a ranged item or something like that, the light from your weapon could be used to either blind them or identify the target. If you are dealing with some kind of animal, then of course blinding and identifying would definitely be a good way to go. Or if you have some kind of assailant who's armed with like a club or a knife or something, they're coming at you, and without your weapon light you'd be dealing with a dim light situation, then identifying that target will also be a very good way to go. And if you are in a situation where you actually have to use that particular firearm against that particular threat, weapon light, like I said, probably would be the preferred. If you are in a fighting situation, then having something to where you don't have to have a secondary light in your non-dominant hand, so you can have that dominant hand on your firearm to achieve accuracy and stability upon firing, that would be the preference. However, more often than not, you're going to find that you're going to use your light more than your firearm. I always recommend that people carry some kind of secondary flashlight with them. I always carry some kind of secondary flashlight with me, not this one. This is just one that I grabbed off my table. But I carry some kind of secondary flashlight with me so I can identify what's going on as to, and you know, if I got to draw on my sidearm, then I can to handle the threat. But carry yourself a searchlight as well. That's what I call this. Flashlight specifically for searching and identifying. If you identify a threat and you're like, oh God, that's coming at me, now that I know it's a problem, I need my handgun. So you just get rid of that, pull out this right here. Now in my particular case, the on-off switch for a light like this, very simple. It's just right here where my finger would be. Bam, if I had a battery in this, then bam, that would be on. I'd identify my target. I have light on target, and I can go ahead and take care of what needs taken care of. But with that searchlight, I was able to look through, and you know, maybe I'm in a situation where I don't know if that's a threat or not. Let me have a look. No, that's not a threat. That's just my neighbor taking out his garbage. All right, well, I guess I don't have to shoot at that. Or, oh, that's not a threat, that's just, you know, neighborhood watch walking down the street. Or, oh, that's not a threat, that's just a police officer telling me that he found my daughter at her boyfriend's house at 3 in the morning. Oh boy, I sure am glad I wasn't brandishing a firearm for that one. But having some kind of light for identification, some kind of secondary light for identification to go on top of a weapons light for actual engagement would probably be a very good idea. Now, having a weapons light for engagement specifically depends on what the engagement is going to entail. If you're dealing with someone that has a knife, or you're dealing with an animal, or somebody that does not have a ranged object, and you need to be able to put as many rounds on a target as accurately and quickly as possible, then a weapon light would probably be a good idea. However, if somebody also has a ranged item, like for example, if you have a handgun and they have a handgun, your weapons light will allow you to see them, but they could just aim at where the light's coming from. And as a result, especially in like a darkened area, it's very clear as to where that light is, and you are just letting out a beacon as to your location. So if you're dealing with somebody who has the means to be able to touch out to a distance, then perhaps a weapons light would not be the best option, and a secondary light would be your best option. I have seen people in like movies, and I've seen Hollywood do this a couple of times. Many times you'll see people holding a handgun with a flashlight over their wrist like this, so they can achieve basically what you would achieve with a weapons light, being able to look in a particular area with your handgun drawn. I don't recommend doing this with a semi-automatic, because once that slide comes back, you're going to hit your wrist. If you are going to do something like this, make sure that your non-dominant hand is underneath of your dominant hand holding that handgun. If you have a revolver, you can get away with something like this. But otherwise, I would recommend it just holding like this. Now with this right here, you can actually use your non-dominant hand and your non-dominant arm to stabilize that platform to achieve slightly more accurate shots. It's not going to be as accurate as actually holding the handgun, but you will achieve some additional accuracy since you can have this resting on your forearm right here to be able to make shots on target. Now, the only problem with that is if your opponent has a ranged firearm or a ranged weapon of some kind, then you are putting out a beacon of light. This is something that I picked up from this ex-officer I was talking to. He told me that if you hold your secondary light away from you, yes, you only have one hand to be able to engage your target, but if they cannot see you and they can only see the light and they start shooting at that light, then they're going to be firing several feet away from you, and the likelihood of them hitting you is quite low. Now, most people here in the United States are not going to be trained that efficiently with handguns, and as a result, trigger control for most of your individuals that you're going to come across is not going to be very good. So if you do decide to use the method where you hold the light away from your body like this to where your assailant engages the light, hold this light in your left hand. Most of the time when somebody with not that good trigger control fires on a target, they're going to end up pulling slightly right. Seriously. Anytime you're dealing with somebody who has basically a lack of training and inexperience with handguns, they're going to end up pulling right simply because as they pull that trigger, the handgun will go right. Well, if you're holding in your left hand, they pull that handgun right, it's going to end up going actually further away from your body if you're dealing with somebody who is inadequately trained, and most of the people that you would be dealing with would be inadequately trained. And that's assuming that you're dealing with someone who actually knows how to line up sights and pull a trigger and send lead in a general direction without going like this and just ba 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 ba. But if you're dealing with somebody who just goes like this, then maybe having the light out here won't really matter, because you're basically going to be getting a shotgun spread of lead coming towards you. But for the most part, if you're dealing with somebody who actually has some inkling of an idea of how to handle a firearm, they go shooting at that light. Unless they're adequately trained, they're going to likely pull right. Most of your people in the United States are not adequately trained with handguns, so they're probably going to pull right, and they're going to send that lead further away from you. If you are left-handed and your non-dominant hand is your right hand, and somebody pulls right, those rounds are actually going to come closer towards you. So although you're holding your flashlight away from you, once those rounds start coming at you, even though they're aiming at the flashlight that is several feet away from you, you do risk chance of getting hit by somebody who does not have proper trigger control, because most of your people are going to end up pulling right. So if you are left-handed and you decide to perform that action, I recommend just using your non-dominant right hand to go ahead and engage your target. And if you have issues with that, then go ahead and just get some training on shooting non-dominant. As a matter of fact, that's probably going to be a video in itself, shooting both dominant and non-dominant hand to increase your capabilities on doing so. Another fun little statistic, if you are in a situation where you have to start firing after you take your first shot, if you take at least one step, I recommend going right, just because of that trigger control issue. As they pull their trigger, they're going to be firing right. If you're traveling in the opposite direction, then odds are those rounds are going to go even further away from you. But if you step even a little bit away from where you originally had fired, your odds of getting hit decrease substantially. So just a couple of little tidbits of friendly advice. If you are dealing with someone without a ranged weapon, weapon light definitely comes in handy for identifying and putting down your target. If they have a ranged weapon, have a secondary light, keep it away from your body, keep it on your left side. Odds are they're going to be pulling right if they're not adequately trained. Even if they are adequately trained, you still have several feet of space right here. And if they're putting rounds directly where the light is, then you're going to have rounds zipping by you by several feet, and I would take that over right on top of me any day of the week. Avoid holding off body with the right hand. You'd end up getting hit by somebody who does not have proper trigger control. And whenever you fire, if you have to fire in some sort of situation where somebody is firing back, take a step to the right. I mean, you can go left. I wouldn't recommend it, because if they start firing at where you currently were, where that shot just came from, their rounds, if they have poor trigger control, would be going in the direction that you are currently stepping in. So I recommend going right. If you can't do that, if there's a brick wall there, then you got to do what you got to do. But these are a little bits of information. As a matter of fact, I might make more videos talking about specifically tactical advantages, just like that right there. But hopefully this right here gave some indications on why weapon lights could or could not be a good idea depending on your situation. More often than not, they're not going to be a good idea. You would be using a secondary spotting light to identify, and you wouldn't use the weapon light until actual engagement, depending on what the engagement actually entails. So thanks for watching, folks. I do appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share, description below, link to all sorts of stuff. Go ahead and go check that out. You guys go off, have yourself a fantastic day. I'll see y'all on the next episode. Since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. Poor man's Garen.
It's a shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.